Rabbi Mark, welcome aboard to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Ari.
I just did a podcast where I was the guest yesterday, so I'm getting confused between the having me and joining the show. It's all good. So, we've never had a rabbi on the show. So we're going to start with some really basic questions. Why does anybody become a rabbi? Like, what makes you make that decision?
Well, for me personally, and I think for most, it's a calling.
Mm.
So there's when one listens to the call of one's inner life, the call of the soul, as I like to say, then you know exactly what you're supposed to do. You know what you were created for. And even though it took me a long time to figure it out, I knew that there was something greater that I wanted to do, a service I wanted to do. And for me, Judaism spoke to me in a way that helped me in my recovery from alcoholism and criminality, helped me to be able to live in my own skin for the first time. And I read the Torah and I see myself in every chapter. I see it in every verse almost. And so for me, being able to live into it and teach and help other people grow into who they're supposed to be, I had no choice, really. It was just such a strong call that I had to listen to it and follow it.
If I may, tell us about that. And this is the show of going down the rabbit hole and asking difficult questions. If I may ask you a difficult question, if you would be willing to share what rock bottom looked like and what ironically, that moment of realization or epiphany was for you, what that kind of before and after looked like.
Okay, well, I had fallen so far off any path of decency, any real humanity. I mean, I was a father. I loved my daughter. I was a son. I loved my mother, a brother, etc. And yet I wasn't being human. I was a drunk and a thief. And so here's a funny story. I'm on my way. I'm living in Los Angeles. I'm on the run from the cops because I know they're looking for me again. And I'm going to go. It's a Thursday, and on Friday, I'm going to Las Vegas to bet a 10-team football parlay. I was a good handicapper in those days at 350 to 1, and I was going to make my head. I was going to win, and I'd get about $75,000, pay off all my debts, and be clean. Instead, I'm walking across the street, and a white Ford Fairmount turns the corner. And I'm looking at the sports page. I'm looking at the odds, etc. And somebody gets out of the car and calls my name. I look up. It's Detective Jim Bashira. This is December of 1986. He had arrested me in January of 1981. He had seen in November a wanted poster on me from Santa Barbara County. And it all clicked. He arrested me. I'm in a jail cell. I get phone calls. So I call my first wife and I say, come pick up this money because they want me on theft and I have cash. So I say, come pick up this money. She said, what bail bondsman do you want me to call? I said, don't call anyone. The man upstairs is trying to tell me something and I have to sit here until I figure it out. Ari, I hadn't thought about God. I hadn't thought about Judaism. I hadn't thought about anything. That was an ecstatic experience. So I called my brother, who is a rabbi and has been a rabbi for 50 years. And I said, send me a Torah and a prayer book. And he did. And I went back to davening, to not praying, but davening, being engaged in the prayers like I had learned from the old men I used to go to shul with, go to minyan with after my father died when I was 14. And I'm 35 at the time. So I'm going 21 years, I'm going back. And I found, I started to read the Torah and I saw, oh my God, here I am. What the fuck? How didn't I see this? Why didn't I read it like this? How come I wasn't taught this? And the prayers just made me look inside myself. So that was the epiphany. And when I got to prison, Rabbi Mel Silverman of blessed memory started to study with me. I said, are you going to cut me loose? Because nobody really wanted anything to do with me, because if you had anything to do with me, I screwed you over. I was a spiritual rapist at the time, because if you trusted me, I would screw you over. I would take that trust, stomp on it, and get what I wanted to get. And he said, how can I cut you loose? You're a Jew, you're one of my own. And I cried. And we started studying. And that is, not only did I have the epiphany, but I followed it through for a change, which was, I'd never followed anything through except being a drunk and a criminal. So I gave that same passion I had for alcohol, the same passion I had for being a thief, and I put it into something good, which was learning about me. And since 1987, February of 1987 to be exact, I have studied every day, and I've prayed every day, and I've learned more about me every day. And I've been engaged in the process of teshuvah, repentance, return, and new response, which really for me is repair, change, and hope, for the past 38 years. And my life is fantastic.
What do you think made it stick? I mean, a lot of people hit rock bottom and they relapse. What was different for you in the experience that made it stick?
Well, first of all, I think, I didn't have a lot of places to go. I was sort of a captive audience. Really, though, it was that it spoke to me.
With that said, right, I think the number who get out of jail end up back in there. So
Right.
so the stats are still showcasing that you succeeded in a big way.
Right. When I was in prison, it was 80% recidivism. But what happened was, I took the time. Rabbi Silverman introduced me to Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, and that he changed my life. He spoke to the loneliness that I experienced. He spoke to my soul. He spoke to my mind. And the Torah, I kept reading it, and I saw myself in Jacob, who actually, Jacob, Israel, he was a con, a cheat, a liar, and a thief. I liked him. I could relate to him. And then Judah screws his daughter-in-law and gets King David. I mean, it's not fair. So I learned life isn't fair, and there's always return. Are you willing to do the work? And I spent the 2 years, the year in 18, 19 months in prison, doing nothing but this work. I wasn't perfect. I still had a little side hustle, it wasn't some goody two-shoes. And I knew that this was the only way I was going to be able to live. Again, in 1987, I think it was February or March, I got a letter from my, at that point, 6.5-year-old daughter. Dear Daddy, I hate you. You're a part of me. When you're in jail, a part of me is in jail. Love, Heather. I mean, I have the epiphany. I meet Rabbi Silverman, start to study, and I get this letter. So I owed. See, one of the things that Rabbi Heschel talks about is the debt.
Hmm.
So when I realized that I owed and it was time for me to pay the debt, I had no choice but to do what it takes to be a decent human being. I thought of my father, Oliver Sholem. He was a moral man. He was a good man. Most of my uncles, good people. My aunts, everybody was a good person. I had one uncle that wasn't, and I followed him, and I said, no, I can't do it anymore. I can't live like this. So it was a spiritually conscious decision that said, enough. Dayenu.
Dayenu. Was there a moment where you almost relapsed to old patterns because change is difficult? How did you stop yourself?
Well, there's two moments I can tell you. Early on, when I got out, I went to work at Beit Shuva, and the Jewish Residential Recovery Center in Los Angeles, founded by my now wife, Harriet Rosetto. And we were having a problem one Friday night, and I got pissed off, and I walked home. It was about a mile and a half, and I was steaming. And I had a sponsor in AA, and I called him, and I said, I'm not doing this. This is ridiculous. It's bullshit. People are full of crap, blah, blah. And he said, did you drink? I said, no. And I go on into a rant, and he stops me again. He says, you haven't had a drink? I said, no, I haven't had a fucking drink. And he says,
Good
do
job.
you know then why are you calling me? I said, we had a deal that before I did anything stupid or changed anything, I would call you. I keep my deals. And he started laughing. He says, you're the first guy in 12 years of doing this that called me before. And I started to laugh. So I knew that I wasn't going to, okay, you got pissed off. You went into one of your rants. Calm yourself down, apologize to Harriet, and move forward.
Yeah.
And then later on in the 90s, there was a scam going on with Russians
Hmm.
for a Medicare scam. And I'm going to rabbinical school at the time, making 20 grand a year working.
Hmm.
Supposed to be part-time, but it's really full-time. And going to rabbinical school, learning two new languages, Hebrew and Aramaic. Nobody
Hmm.
talked Aramaic much.
Not around here.
And so they're telling me about how much money they're making. And the thought goes through my head,
Wow.
wow, I could do this for a couple months, get,
Easy.
make a ton of money and quit. And then I started laughing. I started laughing out loud. The guy I'm sitting with says, what's
Oh
so fun?
wow.
I said, I thought, well, why don't I do this for a couple months, get the money, I won't be in debt, be able to pay for school completely. And then I realized there's no fucking way I'm going to do this for a couple of months. I'll get seduced. God bless you. No thanks. Because I could see what this whole process of tshuva gives me is such clarity of vision inside of me.
Hmm.
And I learned how to wrestle with my own Yetzer Hara, my own evil inclination, and transform it to do good.
Lahavdil. My son yesterday, he is as sick as a dog, and he started this business. Basically, he's 13, and he started this business basically selling stuff on eBay. And he is as sick as a dog, and he looks terrible, right? He looks like he's not drinking enough. We're telling him to drink, and he's not. And he's fighting with this box because he has to package this package to ship it out next day because that's his commitment to the customer. And he's 13. And I'm like, why don't you do this tomorrow? Like, don't worry about it. And he's like, no, Dad, I made a commitment. I gave my word. I need to honor it. And I gave him the easy way out. I gave him the easy button. And he said that to me, and I have goosebumps just remembering, what happened last night. I said to him, Liam, I am proud of you. Technically you became a man when you became 13, but now you're an adult. That's what adults do. They carry through their words, and that's what you did in that moment. And I mean, oh my God, what a thought if everyone just did that.
Right. Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't that be nice? So you go through your own trials and tribulations. You're seduced. And we don't technically have a devil in Judaism, but you're seduced by the evil thoughts or the evil wills. At some stage, you come to the conclusion you want to make a change or help others. When did that happen?
Well, it happened during the time I was in prison. The seed started, and then when I got out and I went to work at Beit Tshuva, the first thing I did was I said I wanted to lead a Torah study every morning.
How do you not feel like an imposter? You're basically out of jail, and you want to lead something which is considered, for lack of better words, divine. How do you step into that and say, I'm going to help others where I failed?
It wasn't so much where I'm going to help others where I failed. It was, here's what's helping me live well.
Mm-hmm.
And I need a community. I need people to wrestle with the text for this moment.
Mm.
So what is this chapter telling me in this moment? And what's it telling other people? And how do we reflect our ideas and our souls, our authentic parts to one another? And so I looked at, again, it was a calling. It wasn't, I mean, you're right, okay? In some ways, it's outrageous, arrogant, audacious, etc. But isn't that what spirituality is? I mean, living a spiritual life, living Jewishly, as I like to say, is audacity at its height. Not a lot of people live Jewishly. Even the rabbis and blah blah blahs don't live Jewishly. Living into the text. I mean, think about it. Nachmanides says in Leviticus chapter 19, it says, "Kadoshim tihiyu." You will be holy because Ani Adonai, I Adonai am holy. I mean, think about that. Is that not an audacious statement? It's outrageous. And when you look at biblical Hebrew, when it's in the future, what we would call the future tense, it means something that started but not yet completed. So we're born. We have holiness in our guts.
The
The
interesting thing, that's worth staying on for a moment. It's future tense. There's no you are, there's no tomorrow. It's you will be.
Yes, and that means you already are on the continuum. So how do you move forward? And we already had all the laws, so why do we need to know that we're holy? Because as the Ramban says, you can be Nabal Reshut b'Torah. You can be a scoundrel within the bounds of the text of the law. And so it's really talking about the spirit of the law as well as the letter. Because if all you do is the letter, you can bastardize it in a moment. And we see that happening today, be you Christian, Muslim, or Jewish. We see it in all the religions, the major Western religions, where people are bastardizing the beauty, the kodesh, the holiness of our.
So this is maybe the biggest pet peeve that I have. And it's not about the word, it's about the thought. Explain to me your philosophy as it comes to interpretation. Because one thing can be interpreted in multiple ways. And in fact, it's built into the system, right? Hillel, Shammai. How do you approach interpretation? Because you can read the one text and come out with very different interpretations. We see that throughout all the religions. What's the process that one should apply to get somewhere, let's say, of value to themselves and to the people around them?
That's a great question.
Unfortunately, Rabbi, you're not getting the easy questions today.
That's great. I love it. So here's the thing, Ari, for me. There are parts of the Torah that I know were added later.
Mm.
Okay? Because what's the main part of the text? The Asher Dibrot, the 10 sayings,
Mhm.
the Holiness Code, Mishpatim. What comes right after the 10 commandments, 10 sayings, is social ordinances, how to live with one another.
Yes.
So I have to see the text different every year. I want you to understand that if I look at it and I have the same thing that I had last year, then I am stuck. So my spiritual growth is measured by how I see the text. And
But there's something fundamentally problematic, maybe, about what you're saying. Shouldn't there be a right answer?
no,
Explain that.
okay. Judaism is the originator of both and. A right answer is binary thinking. When you're in binary thinking, you have us and them, enemies and allies, and you no longer see that Tselem Elohim in another human being. You make him an object. How can I make you an object? You and I could disagree violently. And I have to see you as a Tselem Elohim, as a image of the divine. I have to see your soul, because if I don't, then I can't relate to you. And if I don't relate to you, then I don't consider you part of the whole. And if I don't consider you part of the whole, I have to harm you. So, as my friend and teacher and Rabbi Ed Feinstein says, when somebody says, what does Judaism say? It depends.
Like a good economist, a rabbi will tell you, it depends.
It depends. So you see, here's the thing. When I'm reading a text, okay, uh, um, you know, I have to look at it from all the sides. I have to turn it over and over and over. Okay? I mean, look at the Talmud. Most of the arguments in the Talmud end with teku. We'll know the answer when Elijah the prophet.
So these are
Learning to live with uncertainty. See, here's the thing, okay? Right answer is asking for certainty. There is no certainty.
no
The only certainty is I'll die. That's
and
it.
taxes.
Yeah, and taxes.
And taxes.
But there's people who get out of paying taxes, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No. Hopefully they'll get what they deserve, but I don't know that
Amen.
to be. I don't know that to be true. Here's my problem. Many of us crave simple answers, but what I'm learning from you is that there are no simple answers, and that the answer is not the answer. The answer is the question. You need to stay in the question. The question matters more than the answer.
So one of my teachers, Rabbi Jonathan Omerman, of blessed memory, said, what's the question that this experience is the answer for? So I'm thinking about this. I'm engaged with you in this. What's the question that this is? The question is, how am I going to convey to you the beauty, the richness, the love that our tradition has for every human being? How am I going to convey to you the power, the beauty, the awesomeness of Teshuvah? We're in the month of Elul, after all. And so that's the question that comes up. The experience is the answer. I have to find the right question. And most of us have the right answers to the wrong questions.
It's not to make light of it, but we all know the answer. It's 42. The question is, what's the question? It's funny. I just made that joke at work today earlier, but it's the journey. It's not the outcome. It's the question. It's not the answer. I mean, we kind of know these truths, but it seems that we can kind of say them, but we don't know how to live them.
Right.
What's the difference? Like, how do we we have all the answers already, but we don't understand how to live it day by day.
Okay. So, for me, I live it day by day by being the best Mark Borovitz I can be in this moment. You're getting the best of me. Now, 10 minutes from now, I'll be different, and it's still the best. So, one of the things is to not have the destination. There is no destination, as you just said. Remember, the Torah ends and we're outside the land of Israel. Think about that. We never get in, but we take a long journey and we fuck up along the way. And then we come back. So, how do we live it? Compassion. I say 5 more, but certainly 5. We live by being in truth. We live it by being truthful. We live it by being loving. We live it by being kind. We live it by being compassionate, and we live it by being authentic. What's the sin of the Garden of Eden? Do you know?
Eating the apple, but that's not the sin.
Of course not. They were gonna. If I tell you, Ari, do not do. You tell your kids, do not do this. What are they gonna do?
I would say the sin is not thinking, not doing something you were told not to do.
No, the sin is hiding.
Ah,
God calls out, Ayeka, where are you?
right.
God's still calling, where are you? Where are you, Ari? Where are you, Mark? Where are you? And if I can't say Hineni, if I need to blame her or him or the snake or the this or I'm lost. So how do I live it? I don't hide. I be me. And you want to know something? Being me is wonderful and great, and I'm loud and I'm obnoxious and I'm abrasive and I'm all of these different things, and I'm inappropriate because I can't stand bullshit. When people are giving me bullshit, I erupt like a volcano. It doesn't do well in proper circles.
No.
And I can't do anything else. I've tamed it down a lot. I don't get as, and I still do. So when I'm loving and kind and compassionate and authentic and truthful, I'm living my life, and I'm living according to, if you'll excuse the expression, God's will. And that's the thing. Okay, what does God demand of us? 36 times in the first 5 books of the Bible, it says, love the stranger, care for the poor, take care of the needy. Remember the widow and the orphan. I mean, give me a break. How do you have ICE coming and throwing and locking people up and sending them all over the country and say that you're a good Christian or a good Jew? You can't, because it says 36 times to love the stranger. As people who've been hated because we're strangers, how the hell can we do that to somebody else? That is not living it. Not to be political, you understand. But I'm saying,
well, you opened the door. So on this show, we don't allow politics. So I'm going to have to give you the devil's advocate,
okay.
meaning fight you on it. I'm not portraying my own opinions, but if anybody kind of breaks the no politics law, I have to give the contra.
Okay.
In Judaism, there's law. When you break the law, there are consequences. how does "Ahavta l'racha kamocha" consolidate with breaking the law and basically taking away benefits from other people, because there's trade-offs here. So, we've got a baby, Solomon is saying, oh, cut the baby in two. There are ethical challenges here that are colliding. How do
Yes.
we solve for problems that don't have solutions? Like, if I
Holding
have a different value, you have a different value, we're going to have different solutions to an ethical problem that has no solution. How do we
right.
even have an opinion about that?
So here's the thing, okay? Holding people accountable is paramount in our tradition, and it's necessary for living. I agree. How we hold them accountable, making sure that we stay on the moral high ground, stay in line with the divine. Look, there were cities of refuge. Why did they set up cities of refuge? Why did the Sanhedrin never have that if they had one capital punishment in 70 years, they were called a murderous court? Because, of course, there's got to be consequences. Of course, people have to be responsible. I went to prison because I was being held responsible. I agree with that. Okay? It's that there's ways to do it, and cruelty is never a proper way. That's all I'm saying.
I, I
And
think
balancing those two things,
that's fair. That's
putting
fair.
them, and it's hard. Okay, I don't have the answer. I don't
Yeah.
have the answer. I just know that there's got to be a better way of doing things if we're going to live authentically, compassionately, kindly, truthfully, and uh, with love.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think that the problem with humans is that we tend to jump from one extreme to the other.
Yes,
So if the other is basically, oh, we should kick them out and they're criminals, they should not come in, then the natural tendency is to go to the other extreme, which is, oh, let's welcome everybody with open hands and ask no questions. This is the human condition. It's a condition of extremities. The path is somewhere in the middle.
of course. That's what Judaism shows you. That's what it gives us, is a middle path. Now, when I say middle, I'm talking about 10 to 15% away from both extremes. That we live in
How,
this the 80%.
how do we are suffering a global pandemic of extremism. How do we bring opposing sides to find that, and even if it's 60% in the middle, that's quite large. How do we help people find the common grounds? Because today it just seems like we're just shouting at each other and not listening.
Okay, so our tradition says that you sit down and you wrestle. We wrestle it out. We come in and we say, okay, I have my opinion, my agenda. You have your opinion, you have your agenda. Let's look at it and wrestle out what's the best solution in the moment where we can come together. I was in Washington, D.C. I lived there for a year. And I watched the congressmen and the senators, and they found ways to compromise. They would yell at each other and all this stuff, and blah 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 for the news. And then you'd see them sitting together in the bar, having a
Figure it
drink,
out.
having a meal, figuring it out, etc. There's always a way to figure it out. We just have to be willing to say, I don't need to be right.
Hmm.
It's in relationships and marriage. Do I want to be right? Do I want to be loving?
We got the answer. What's the question?
Right.
Rabbi Mark, believe it or not, we're out of time. There's one question we ask every single guest. It's the only scripted question in the show. It's a
Okay.
hard one. If you had to go to one of the most difficult points in your life, whether 10 minutes ago or 20 years ago, what advice would you give yourself?
The most difficult moment in my life was after my father died and I was alone. Because he was the one who got me, who understood my soul, could speak to me.
Mhm.
I would tell myself to let go of the anger and allow myself to be embraced by his spirit.
Rabbi Mark, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Ari. This was a pleasure. I'm so blessed.